Coming to you from a vampire's den in New Orleans. It's the Little Podcast of Horrors with James, Christina, and Chris.
Hello! I have to do my Mrs. Doubtfire hello every time.
It does sound like Mrs. Doubtfire. Hello there, Mrs. Geneva Doubtfire. How are you doing today?
Chris has really good accents.
Oh, yes. All my life, I could just be like, hello there. Welcome to the Little Podcast of Horrors. We are your lovely trio of hosts. Chris.
Christina.
And James.
You know, at this point, we are just making it up as it goes along. Like, I swear to God.
Awkward's our thing. So we actually do have a special guest today. Welcome in, Aly Cardinalli. So Aly is...
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a little quick intro for you. He's a talented psychic, witchdoctor, and instructor extraordinaire. He owns the largest online school for witchcraft and psychic development, Bear Bridge Academy, and the illustrious Otso Salon, where you can hire mediums, witches, and psychics for assistance in your spiritual needs. So welcome in, Aly. We're really excited that you're here.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. And that was the best introduction because I would just fumble over what I do. And so I'm like, wow, can I hire you to like also do my voicemail? And...
I know she's the best. So
yeah, I had to prepare it. You know, I can't just do on the fly. It would sound terrible, but yeah, so welcome in. I'm looking at my list of questions here that I prepared. Let's just get straight into it. So Aly, you're like a super talented, sensitive psychic. You and I actually met through the psychic development and mediumship class, which is one of the best courses. So one question I did want to ask you just straight out the gate, why not? So when we're young, we think that everyone's experiences of the world are like the same, right? The same way we experience them. So how did you first learn you had psychic gifts? Like everybody else isn't experiencing the world the way that you are.
So I wasn't told what was going on with me until I was in my early 20s. I have an older sister who is also psychic. And like a lot of children, those abilities or those sensitivities or senses go away when they're not encouraged. Mm-hmm. Just like if you take a child and, I mean, don't do this, listeners, but if you take a child when they're developing and you lock them in a closet and they can't see light, they lose their sense of sight. It's the same thing with children sensitives. I believe that most people are born with psychic sensitivities, but because they're not encouraged or because they're dampened, they lose them with time, just like you would with other kinds of senses. I went through a very violent near-death experience, and it re-triggered them, almost like a rebirth, or it broke or rewired part of my nervous system. My older sister, I thought I was going crazy. So I called my sister, like, do I need to lock myself up?
Oh.
And she said, no, you're psychic. And I'm like, wait, what? What? And she told me that as a child, and I don't have a lot of memories of early childhood, but as a child, I would stare into the dark shadows of rooms and talk to monsters and talk to demons in the dark and just talk to them. And she thought, of course, it was terrifying to see like Children of the Corn level, like horror, her little brother at 6 years old talking to demons. And she was like, God, I hope he outgrows this. And I did, but then it came back. So she told me to just ignore it, stay away from the dark, stay away, don't. But it ended up being an incredible skill as a psychic to talk to monsters and things that most people are horrified of, because it makes me a good exorcist, because I can actually interact with those creatures directly instead of shooting blind.
That is so interesting. So one thing that you said that made me think of, have you guys seen that show, The Unexplained, with William Shatner?
William Shatner? Yes, I have.
Yes. Okay, so there's an episode about like near-death experiences and then how it like triggers parts of the brain that can make you a savant in certain areas. So one of the guys, he was not musical before, got into a car accident, had some severe brain trauma, and now is like this crazy talented musician. I wonder if that's somehow connected, like that near-death experience like activated or triggered it, right? Like it popped that part of your brain and made it start acting up again, right? I wonder if those are like related experiences.
I think they are, because at least shamanically, you would take children in their early teens and you would almost enforce a trauma to trigger those things to happen in ancient shamanic civilizations, where you would see someone who, as a child, shows that they're gifted in this area, but to make sure that it continues, you would induce a near-death experience on those teens, like a vision quest. In order to make sure that it continues, you would enforce a near-death experience.
Oh, wow. That is interesting. So you have this near-death experience. You rediscover this part of yourself. Is there anyone in your life, or did you meet anyone, find anyone that acted sort of as a mentor to help guide you? Because you act as a mentor to tons of people, right? Did you have anyone like that in your life once you kind of rediscovered this ability?
I had my sister, but she is very much down the path of ignore and try not to encourage. She is a death medium, so she talks to the human dead, and she is precognitive, which I think is just a really rough mix. So seeing and talking to dead people all the time can be a problem if you're just trying to function in the Walmart. Or it could, land you on a very interesting video in the Walmart. But she also is precognitive, and knowing someone's future very easily can also be upsetting, especially when you shouldn't share it, or it could change, or because there is also the butterfly effect that can take place with speaking about the future. So she very much was part of don't listen, but let's understand. So I was taught to understand myself. However, my sensitivities are much different than hers. And there were parts that we would have to almost brainstorm to understand. And through a lot of trial and error, and honestly, like watching TV and saying that doesn't apply to me, and taking other people's courses that doesn't apply to me, there is a chasm of psychic development that it ignores so many different kinds of psychics in order to capitalize on a Hollywood product style. Like everybody assumes that every medium is a death medium where you talk to the dead,
Right.
and that they can access anyone at any time, like they're machines instead of people.
Right.
And that's just not realistic. I mean, if we think about how many living people there are now, compound that by how many dead people there were, and you're just supposed to find that one. Oh, okay.
Good luck.
Yeah, we'll just do that for you right now. And there's also all the biases that come into being a psychic, where what I'm training my mediums right now is being able to name their biases before they go into a session. For instance, I had a friend and a spirit approached me, and the way I saw the spirit's name was Julius or Julian. And I said, does that name mean something to you? And he said, no. And I was like, okay, then it's just a random spirit. Like, I don't know, just, fuck that spirit, then leave me alone. But it kept coming up. And it turned out that his father's name was Julio.
Oh.
Because he was white presenting,
Mhm.
I had a bias that it was a white presenting name, even though it's spelled the same. Julio, Julian, Julius. I had a bias. So teaching that from my own mistakes to students, you need to name your biases. You have someone sitting in front of you who's white presenting, you cannot assume that the spirit is also going to have a white presenting name.
Right. Well, there's also a linguistic bias too, right? Like you're American, so Julian or Julius would be more aligned with like an American name rather than Julio, right? So that's interesting. So you said something about awkward moments in Walmart, okay? So have you had any awkward public encounters or like psychic experiences or anything like that?
So most of my awkward psychic experiences have to do with my children.
Uh-oh.
You can imagine like having a psychic dad and what that world is like. Whether it's I know things that I really shouldn't know because, they're growing young women, or them helping me through a situation where it's awkward because I'm being overstimulated. One awkward one was in a Walmart with my oldest daughter, and it was near Christmas and it was super crowded, and I was having a very hard time focusing. And she went off and got some things and came back to the cart, and in the cart I had cat litter and ice cream and a hammer and just like super random things. And we don't have a cat. I don't like ice cream. And it was because I started shopping other people's grocery lists while I was walking through the store. So I'd pass someone and just go, oh yeah, I need that. And would add it. And she's like, we need to just leave because we don't need any of these things. We need to just go. This is ridiculous. So that was
amazing.
Kind of uncomfortable. Another one was my youngest daughter was on a date, and she knows this one, so I can talk about it publicly. Okay. My youngest daughter was on a date, and my ex-husband and I were watching a movie at home, and I felt that her date was starting to get physical.
Oh no.
Oh,
right.
Man.
Awkward.
So,
Dad, no.
So I said something to my ex. I was like, oh, Nina's, it's going really well. she's starting to make out with her date. And more of like a purge, like, okay, let me acknowledge this is here so I can purge it and plug into something else and focus somewhere else and read psychically something else so that I'm not attached to, I don't want to know where this is going to go. So I told him what was so embarrassing was the next morning, he told her.
Oh no.
Oh no. No.
I know. He told her that I plugged in, and she had the best response because, again, like, it's not new information that this could happen. She said, oh, that must have been really awkward for him.
Nice.
She sounds amazing.
Right?
That is so awkward though. I would die.
It was. Oh my God. And I was like, why did you tell her that? That she should not have known that I saw. And so I went up to her and I said, I'm so sorry. I definitely was not poking around. I definitely don't want to see or know or anything. And she's like, oh, I know it was by accident, but yeah, that must have been really uncomfortable. What makes it even more uncomfortable is that she's also gay. So it went from me as a gay man to seeing a two-woman relationship, one of which is my daughter. Like, it was
No.
very uncomfortable.
You're like, I can't experience that.
I can't let me hurry up and plug in somewhere else because I do not want this. So yes, there's been quite a few uncomfortable or awkward psychic moments.
That's crazy. So people can probably guess based on what you just said some of your psychic senses, but do you want to talk about like your specific abilities and sensitivity so it can be more explicit, I guess?
Sure. My strongest or my most sensitive is called clairsentient. I'm what's considered an oversensitive in that area. So clairsentience is commonly confused with the word empath. A clairsentient is someone whose physical body reproduces someone else's physical body. So if I am overly plugged in, I show symptoms of stigmata, where my nervous system or the mirror neurons in my brain think that something is happening to me physically that's not there. I've been hospitalized by accidentally plugging into someone who's having a heart attack, and I'm showing all the symptoms of a heart attack, but there's nothing actually wrong with my heart. I'll bleed, but there's no cut. Those are the oversensitives in clairsentience. So in Christianity, they look at that as a miracle, and I'm like, it's not a miracle, it's just psychic.
Yeah.
I'm also claircognitive and clairvoyant, but I'm not oversensitive in those areas. I'm just a normal psychic in those areas, if you could say normal. And then with spirits, I'm clairaudient, but I'm not clairaudient with humans. So those are my areas. For people who don't know what those mean, as a clairvoyant, I see in my mind's eye, like imagination, but I'm not creating it, it's being put there. Visual representations of psychic stimuli. And then claircognitive is information-based. In fact, there's a brilliant PhD from Italy who supposes that geniuses are actually oversensitive claircognitives.
Oh, yeah.
They just understand information that they shouldn't have access to, which is what psychic is, right? You have information that you don't have access to. It just drops in their head. So a genius is, in parapsychological terms, a claircognitive oversensitive.
Okay. You know what? So that musical savant that I mentioned earlier, he probably
Psychic.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. I don't want to hog the questions. Okay, there we go.
You mentioned earlier that you start off, like a lot of children will start off with those natural abilities that they're kind of born understanding, or, they can have those. Would you ever think that maybe when people are naturally born, have you ever seen people who are born with handicaps tend to hold on to those abilities more? And the reason I ask that is actually somebody who was very close to me. He was my cousin. He was born with cerebral palsy and he couldn't walk. And from the moment he could pretty much talk until he died, which was just a few years ago in his 40s, unfortunately, he had what we affectionately refer to as his friend, somebody he spoke to regularly. And as a child, you would kind of dismiss it like, oh, it's an imaginary friend. But his father, my uncle, very down to earth, very just good guy. Don't get me wrong, wonderful guy. Loved him and he was a good dad. he used to do this thing where he would sit in the bedroom with him in the evenings. He would carry him to bed, and he'd like to sit there and talk with him. And finally, my uncle I guess, it kind of reached that point, where my cousin, he's a teenager, but he's still talking to this person. So my uncle just decided to ask him, like, buddy, who are you always talking to? And because he had cerebral palsy, he had a speech impediment, a speech impediment. So, he couldn't always speak clearly like you or I can. And then just out of the darkness, a voice said, "Oh, he's just talking to me." So, I mean, have you come across that? Or would you say that's a more common occurrence, or?
I think it is a common occurrence. Again, if we look at just the biology of human beings, if someone is hard of hearing, their sight usually becomes better. If someone has a difficult time seeing, their hearing becomes better. Why wouldn't it also then be so that these other senses, which we are now able to measure, not well, not well, but we are able to measure these other senses that interact with things that we don't see, would be stronger? It only makes sense that he is talking to someone who's there that someone else can't.
Okay. Because the thing is, too, it kind of also seemed to happen with I have 3 children myself. I had 3 sons. My 2 oldest, when they were younger, and this is just part of the reason why I'm very fascinated and I'm very interested in these things. My mother died when I was 19. So she never met any of her grandchildren. My firstborn, when he was a baby, he seemed to be seeing somebody that wasn't there. And then one day he kind of just came in and asked, "Where's Donna?" That was my mother's name. I'd never said anything to him. Eventually it stopped, as you said, he grew out of it. My second child, the same thing happened. He seemed to be seeing somebody that nobody else could see. And then one day he said something along the lines of mentioning her name. My third child, he's actually autistic, and he's 8 now. And he's constantly talking to people that aren't there. And I've always wondered, I'm like, because of his autism, it's like I've been fascinated and interested in the fact that maybe because of his brain working differently, it allows him to maybe hold on to that more than the rest of us would.
A little bit longer, at least. Your youngest may still, I say unfortunately, because it can be such it's like a world with more color when you are able to be psychic. He may unfortunately still lose it unless it's encouraged. I think the world can be a better place if we can encourage psychic phenomena, because then we can mitigate lying and cheating. We can understand motive. And if people aren't able to hide those things, we can actually have a more peaceful place if they can't hide behind them.
With that.
Yeah.
So if he wants to encourage that, what are the best ways to do that, I guess? Just ask him questions about it, or that's it?
Yeah,
Okay.
sit down and have a conversation and have him literally practice as a medium. What is Donna saying?
Okay.
Is she here? Let's talk. So you be the interpreter for me. How is she? Does she have any favorite memories? Kind of like an interview where you just say, let's talk.
I have begun a little bit like that because my father died last April.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And thank you. And he got to know the boys, obviously, and my youngest constantly brings him up now. His name was Rick. He called him Papa Ricky, and he will randomly, I just tell me, be like, "Papa Ricky loves you." And so at first I was like, okay, well, I love him too. But I kind of started changing that to, well, tell him I love him too. Responding. Because there's that thought occurred to me. I was like, because see, I talked to my dad, and I have that I guess a lot of people go through that where you lose somebody, and if you believe like we do, it's like, I wish I could see you. I wish you could speak to me. I wish you could reach out to me. And he seems to bring that up often when I'm feeling that way, like as if my dad is coming around. It's just that maybe I'm too closed off. And I've really thought about the fact that maybe because of his condition, maybe it has made him more receptive, I guess you could say. And so I've been trying to be very much respectful and encouraging of that, I guess you could say.
I think it's beautiful that you are encouraging that. And it may not be too late for your other boys. It may. But I don't see why you couldn't do the same thing and encourage them as well. They're still young to let's just talk and let's just, because there is shame involved, and shame is such a strong emotion that people are willing to block things out in order to be accepted, because we as humans require validation much more than we require experience.
I would definitely say my eldest, he's a teenager now. He, like me, I think he's very empathic, like especially towards me. We're very close. When I'm upset, he gets upset, even if I'm not expressing it or talking about it. Like, so I've always felt like, my eldest has held on to something of some kind, maybe. So, but yeah, I definitely will encourage it.
So I got a question I've been dying to ask, and you have to forgive me because I'm way out of my element. So I'm just kind of the excited student here, being the newbie. But something ties into something I've been noodling on for a long time, just myself personally. And to start within the framework of what I am familiar with. So I'm a Christian, not of the conservative variety. I'm of the rainbow flag wearing universalist leading variety. But something that I've been exploring.
Like me too. We're both that way.
Yeah. Something I'm exploring is I personally find it very tragic that, and a large part of our modern Western Christian tradition, we've all but divorced ourselves from the spiritual, which is just deeply ironic to me. And I've been learning kind of about the history behind that, and a lot of it seems to stem back to especially a cutoff following Luther and Calvin, where he became a lot more just intellectual than spiritual. But so I've been trying to go back and learn, like, how can we go back and really reconnect with the spiritual? And I think like looking back to monastic Christianity as an example, but to go even further beyond that, as you know better than I, humanity's experience and connection with the spiritual world, the divine, however you want to word it, predates all of our major religions. I mean, we've been doing it long before we had religious terminology to set up biases with. So all that said, that the question I want to ask you is, and this may be too broad a question, but it's what I'm noodling on. What have we lost from our ancient ancestors that we as modern humans could benefit reconnecting with, especially in regards to just spiritual openness?
I love that question because I'm such a nerd when it comes to spirits. What's interesting in humanity, so our ability to document the first interaction or the first proof that we have been spiritual beings is 63,000 years ago with the Aborigines. People want to say it's Göbekli Tepe, which is also very old, but we can go older with Aboriginal evidence that we are spiritual beings. No matter how hard we as humans try to stifle the connection to spirituality, we still have a fascination with it. And that will always keep going. No matter, I mean, look at entertainment. If we didn't have a fascination with it, we wouldn't have the entertainment. Every person has access to spirituality, to spirits. And in surveys, although people say, I think it's 60% of people, this one I don't know, so like Google this, you know, everybody, but 6% of only 60% of people consider themselves religious, and maybe a higher number that's spiritual, but 98% of people believe in spirits.
Wow. That's
Even
cool.
if
Wow, that's a huge
they-
number.
that is like anyone who says, I don't believe in ghosts, you're like, man, you are definitely the minority, because
Right.
people believe in spirits. And intrinsically, when you're alone and afraid in the dark, which is what I say when people go, I don't believe in what you do. And I go, you call me when you're alone and afraid in the dark and tell me you don't believe what I do. Because, girl, you gotta get scared of nothing. And it's telling me it's not nothing. But that 2% is so low, to think that 98% of people believe in something spirit wise. And no matter how hard religion, like Christianity, which was originally very mystical,
Yes.
became anti-spirit and even hunted down people like me, still, even with the most violent time, the Spanish Inquisition, we still have a pervasive need to interact with spirits. It's already there and it's accessible to everyone. I don't like how Hollywood makes people like me look like I am the only one who has access and you have to go through me. Everybody has access to spirits. We just may not be as sensitive. Just like people can still interact with color even though they're colorblind. We understand radar and sonar even if we as biological creatures can't interact. Some of us can. Why not go to those people or learn other ways that non-sensitives have a handicap and can adjust to their handicap? I think that psychics are the way that humans are supposed to be, and non-sensitive people have a handicap, and we need to help them adjust to that handicap. And the handicap is because of the business of religion, not religion itself.
Yes, absolutely.
Religion definitely like to gatekeep God. So it makes sense that even in our entertainment, that kind of still persists, even with the depictions of psychics being the only ones that can do it. It's still like this gatekeeping culture that, I don't know, I feel like is tied to Christianity somehow.
Right. And it takes the fun out of everything. Like I like to say, I find it so much more interesting to find the many more beliefs that we all share in common than those in which we differ. There's so much more that everybody agrees on. And just thinking of like, I like to think, and of course I to a degree don't know what I'm talking about, but from my layman's point of view, you know, I like to think there's a little bit of epistemology, just, you know, difference in wording. What one may call a psychic, like within my tradition, is like, dude, you're a prophet. You know, it's tomato, right? So I like to find the overlaps and the ways that we can find commonality in each other.
I totally agree. In fact, I teach a free class on the different kinds of classifications of mediums, and I talk about prophets as they are psychics. They are specific kinds of psychics who talk to deities. And maybe it's not the Christian one, maybe it's this one, maybe it's this one, maybe it's this one. I personally am omnist, where I think that all of the religions are true. It's humans who are flawed. I think that there is the Christian God whom I cannot hear, but there are also other spirits or deities, and I like to put them on a spirit category, that certain kinds of mediums can hear from. And an oracle is someone who can talk to deities. A prophet is an oracle who can see who gets only future information. So they're like a super narrow area of a kind of, and we look at the oracles, and they're in the Bible, they're in all forms of religion, but they were hunted down because they had an unfair advantage over people who weren't sensitive. And so we had the brutality of humanity that hunted down what I call the savagery of humanity, the people who were so connected to the earth and to spirit. The brutes won. And we still see on Facebook and on any kind of social media that the brutes still keep winning and bullying people who are sensitive. And by doing, like Christina said, gatekeeping, or using the term gatekeeping in order to gatekeep.
Right.
Mhm.
It's phenomenal how many different kinds of psychics there are, but they're not allowed to exist because they haven't earned it, or they don't have a right, or they don't, by some, again, human standards. That came from where? Like if someone is born, if Christina is born a oracle, and she can hear or interact with certain deities of, let's say, Asia, that just happens to be what she can connect to. Humans have this need to gatekeep and say, well, you're not Asian, you're not allowed to. Well, she can't help her own biology. This is just what she can do. And same thing, do you know that Harriet Tubman was an oracle? She had a direct connection to the Christian God, and that is not celebrated as one of her incredible accomplishments, and used that information to the Christian God to help people to safety.
Oh, wow.
She
I
was
had
a
no
psychic.
idea.
Nor did I. That's cool.
That's amazing.
I was the history major of us. Harriet Tubman, pro-abolitionist in the Underground Railroad. That I'd never heard that, but that would make complete sense considering considering how she was able to save so many lives, and successfully too, in a time where
Mhm.
the odds were completely against her. Almost as if you could argue that, yeah, she had some divine knowledge there.
Right. How was her timing? I went to see the Underground Railroad because I wanted to experience Harriet Tubman. I wanted to experience any place I could that there were memories left over in that area. Driving through as a mixed person, and my daughter is also mixed, but she's Black presenting, I felt fear even today. So back then, how was she able to accomplish so much?
Yeah.
They say that it happened, and Chris, please correct my history. They say that it happened, she was brutally attacked and was hit in the head with something horrible. And part of what she was wearing at the time, I guess a scarf or something, ended up stuck inside her skull when she healed. And it was
Oh my
after that
gosh.
point that she was psychic.
Oh,
That
wow.
would
There's
make
that
sense.
brain trauma.
Yeah, and that would actually make sense with a lot of, I'd say, a lot of slavery, sadly, because of the abuse that they suffered. So many of them, there was a very, I'm trying to recall, and I'm poorly at this moment, a lot of that belief system where it was a lot of slaves who were believed to be more in touch with the spirits, that side. And of course it was dismissed by, white people as just, part of their culture and, African mumbo jumbo. But I mean, so many of them were known to be in touch with that side, and it could be very possible, as because of the abuse, because of the things that were done to them. Yeah, it might have made them more receptive.
Not that we're telling listeners, please abuse people so you can become psychic. Like,
No, please do not. No.
No, absolutely not. Please do not
Don't
trigger
get
a
abused so
near-death
you too can be
experience.
psychic. Yeah, don't do that.
No,
Don't lock
please.
your kid in the closets. Don't beat up people to make
No.
them psychic.
No, please.
No.
Yeah, please don't do that. But yeah, Harriet Tubman, yeah, it was, I'm trying to remember, but I remember one of my classes we talked about that, where it was just like she almost seemed to have a almost divine understanding because of her success rate and how she was able to constantly escape being caught doing that. And yes, she suffered great abuse. And I want to say, and listeners, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say that, yeah, she was scarred somewhere on the head because of something that was struck on her, like she was physically scarred.
So Harriet Tubman is a light. I want to redirect us. So Aly, I think it was one of your self-paced intro to dark magic or something like that. In one of those videos, you mention Christianity using dark magic. Can you expound a little bit more upon that? Because I think that's really interesting.
Oh yeah, me too.
Okay. Oh boy. This bring on the hate mail. Okay, so here we go.
Whatever. It'll come to us.
It's okay, so I'm ready. But I do want to preface with, I do not think that Christianity is inherently evil itself
Right.
as a religion. I think humans use it as a evil tool. And this is
Yes.
how it's used as black magic. So if we look at what black magic is, there are 9 categories that fit into what is black magic. Everybody just assumes that black magic means evil, but dark magic means things that are hidden or not accessible, as well as evil. When we try to control people, when we're using witchcraft, it's considered black magic, right?
Right.
Christianity uses their Bible as a means to control people from doing other forms of magic. They're using their Bible as a form of black magic to demonize black magic.
That makes way too much sense. Because I mean,
Well,
and again, and talking from the inside, I mean, like one of the things that drives me crazy with fellow people who claim my faith is we like to how to put this, we like to do this impressive level of doublethink where we're doing the evil thing and projecting it on everybody else, if that makes sense, right? Like we're
Yes.
saying everyone else is doing the horrible thing, but it's us that's doing it. But so the whole like, oh yeah, I feel what you're saying.
What's ironic is Wiccans also do it. So Wiccans who sit in, and again, I'm going to get so much hate mail for this. So Wicca, as the love and light religion of witchcraft, known to be the love and light religion. If I were to enter a group and say, I am a witch doctor and I have a client who hired me to attack their ex-husband because he's still causing them harm and hunting her down, and the justice system isn't helping. So she is desperate and came to me. A Wiccan will say, you can't do that because you are causing harm to another person. By saying that, they are trying to control me and therefore are breaking their own rules.
Yeah. Well, I guess an example.
You shall.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you shall do no harm is the Wiccan creed, but they are harming me by preventing me from doing what I am meant to do as a witch doctor.
Yeah.
Well, and helping someone, like that person can
Even
get help.
if
So
even if it's painful, I am being hired for a service and I am following my path. You can't tell a soldier who is an incredible soldier, they should not be a soldier and be violent because it is their nature. You can't be mad at a scorpion for stinging because it is their nature. You can't be mad at me for doing what my generations and generations of my family have done because it is our nature. You trying to oppress that, not you yourself, but someone trying to oppress that to control is an act of violence. And therefore, you saying you cannot do this because of this rule, that rule does not apply to me. You are trying to control me. And same thing with Christianity. You cannot do that because it goes against the word of God. Actually, God created a whole bunch of different people. And in some circles, I may be a soldier of God, helping out those who are less privileged and do not have the access to systems or to privilege, where I can step in and make it a little bit more even playing ground.
I like the way you put it that way, because a lot of people forget the fact that one of the biggest, what was it? One of the greatest gifts that God gave us was free will to decide, to make your own choices. And yet those same people would want to try to force you to choose what they want you to choose rather than choose for yourself. So,
and my job does, just to be, you know, very transparent, as a witch doctor, I do what I'm hired to do. So if someone hires me, excuse me, to do something that may be considered ethically questionable, and they say, well, that's not fair, my answer is the other party can also hire me.
True.
I'm not
Yeah.
picking teams. If I pick teams, then it's not fair. But that I am hireable to anyone makes it even. It makes it balanced. I'm not upsetting balance. I am part of everything evenly. Just like I when I teach exorcists, I tell them their job is not to attack and kill demons. There is a spiritual ecosystem that needs to be kept. Their job is to stop suffering, not kill demons or kill creatures. If suffering means remove the spirit and put it someplace else where it can still be the scorpion that it is, then do that. Your client no longer has pain and you don't upset the ecosystem. It's a very unpopular opinion, but it's how we did things in ancient times. And I believe in going back to those ways.
Yeah, interesting.
Oh, go ahead, James.
Oh, sorry.
Because I was about to
Apologize for
pivot, so go
interrupting.
ahead.
I'm getting all excited. This is good stuff. So, just to tie back into you're talking about using scriptures black magic, it just occurred to me is like I always bring up to people, and I guess this is the ultimate example of what you're saying, is like Jesus was literally killed by religion, like the very religion he was following. It's like, if there's anything that sets us apart with my faith tradition, is like, hey, we pulled off killing our own God. He got better at least, but it's like, we're that bad.
And we still keep doing it. He was a
And we still keep
prophet, so
doing it.
let's just keep hunting prophets down. Wait,
Right.
what?
Right.
it doesn't make any sense to me at all.
I want to pivot toward exorcisms because I think that's a really interesting thing that you do at the Otso Salon. But first, I want to ask you, like, okay, what's your origin story with exorcisms? Like, what got you into doing this?
Honestly, talent. Like I because I can interact with them, one of my first exorcisms happened by accident.
Really?
I understood. So it was with a demon. I didn't know it was a demon at the time. I just thought it was a spirit. But I was visiting my nephew in the hospital. He had tried to take his life. And
I'm so sorry.
we were in it. Thank you so much. So he was getting care and I was visiting him. I stepped out of the room because I could hear someone suffering. Now remember, as a clairaudient, I don't hear humans, I hear spirits. So there's a spirit that is suffering. There's something wrong here in the hospital. So clairvoyantly, I could see in another room, there's a woman on a bed and she is writhing and she appears mentally ill. And there's a spirit tethered to her, as if there's a net, her spiritual body like a net over her, and there's a spirit like trapped in the net. And while he moves, it causes her to move. So him trying to get away, she then writhes in pain. Speaking to the spirit, I was like, if you sit still, I'll try to set you free. I'll try to let you go, because obviously you're trying to go and you shouldn't be attached to this woman. And everybody thinks that she's crazy, but maybe it's just a spirit problem. So I, as quickly as I could, cut the cords one at a time to get him free. Setting him free, her symptoms stopped. And where they thought that she was schizophrenic was gone. Now it turns out that she was trying to summon this demon and succeeded. The demon came, which is a demon of truth. And she needed truth in her life, and she summoned him. But as most people who might get called to fix situations don't know what they're doing and end up causing a problem. Now, we as humans are so egotistical that we think a spirit is out to get us, but what she had done is cause a problem where the spirit doesn't even want to be there. It is possessed by her. She is almost holding it hostage. Even though we would consider she's possessed, it's actually possessed. He needs to be set free. She's the one that screwed up here. She's the one that pulled him into her. Setting him free, I then also, while I was in there, I kept closing my eyes in the hallway, and nurses kept walking up to me saying, "You can't sleep here, sir." And like trying to get, "You can't stand here. It's the psych ward. You cannot stand here in the hallway." And I'm trying to like work and set a demon free, and my nephew's in another room, and let's just move as fast as we can. The spirit, he came to see me later that night to explain to me what was going on. And to prove the situation, asked me to go back the next day at a specific time to watch her walk out of the psych ward totally symptom free. Wow. That was my first exorcism. And I do believe in I like to say that spirits need doctors too. So although my clients are human, because of the kind of psychic I am, I really cater more to what the spirit needs and to try to understand why it got there, what's going on, what are its needs. And since I can interact with it, it makes me a accomplished exorcist. And my success rate is 95%. It's pretty high. Just like any doctor, though, you have that percentage where you fail, and it's important to acknowledge that. And we learn from those failures. But I ended up then training in as many old ways as possible, because the Christian way is so barbaric and so violent in exorcisms that it didn't fit with who I was as a medium. Like, I'm not going to hurt a creature I can interact with in order to get it to go.
Right.
You talked about, you said demon of truth. I know that in Christianity, they kind of made demons more of like the things of the devil and evil, but
this is my next question.
I was going to say, I'm kind of pulling off of, I want to say that originally, like, if you go back to like Greek and Aristotle or Socrates, I can't remember which one. Something about it was like, it was like demons were more about like is it just more like the spirit, the divine? They're not so much like creatures of darkness, but they're just.
I guess to put another way is within my tradition, demons are a very black and white, evil minions of Satan kind of thing, right? And when we borrow a lot of imagery from other mythologies for that, but I know that what I call a demon and what someone else calls a demon ain't necessarily the same thing. So I was really curious, how do you define a demon?
So if we look at spirituality as the way we understand it now, anything that is not an angel is therefore a demon.
Yeah.
So Christianity has successfully demonized tons of spirits, right, because they don't fit in that category of protector and messenger, which include spirits that say no or fight back, which I also talk about in Dark Magic. If we look at the story of Lucifer, in Luciferianism, being the light bringer, all he said is, I'm not going to listen to you just because I'm told to, and therefore becomes the fallen angel. If we look at all religions before Christianity, they all have that same story of someone revolting against the father figure and leading a new way of being.
Yeah.
With Zeus, with Thor, they all have that. Christianity goes, oh, we don't want people to rebel, so we're going to punish instead the son that rebels, and we're going to memorialize the son that listens. With that, if we look at how damaging truth can be, how harmful, that's why there's a demon of truth. Is we suppress and hide lots of things in order to have peace. Truth hurts. Truth can cause war. Truth, and that's why there's a demon of truth.
Yeah,
We
okay.
That makes sense.
We think that, remember, angels are there for their warriors and their guardians and their messengers. Truth does not fit any of those areas. Learning what someone's true motives are, people don't want to be exposed, and people also don't really want to know the truth.
Truth is painful.
Yeah,
That makes a
it
lot of
is.
sense.
That's why I would never want to read minds.
right.
Me too. Me too. One of my favorite quotes is actually, a true friend stabs you in the chest. Because the thing is, a true friend will tell you the truth, but it's going to hurt. It's going to sometimes get you right in the heart. So that,
Well, and
thank you. That
Christina knows in class, I, as their teacher, I'm very open because I need to be able to confirm if someone reads something about myself personally, but I will also call out if they are fabricating, or if a student is over celebrating something happening. And I'll say, it didn't happen like that. Let's actually talk about it this way. And the reason I can is the clairsentient part. I can feel what another psychic is doing. So I can tell them or explain to them what they are doing or how it's happening to them, because it reproduces in my body.
Yeah.
That clairsentient part being oversensitive. So it's my favorite course to teach, one of my top favorite courses, because I get to help psychics understand that they're not crazy by telling them, hey, remember how you felt this? Well, this is what this means. And they're like, I did feel that, but I was embarrassed to say something. Or I did know that, but I was afraid to say that. Or they'll say, I had a student who said to one of our sitters, or someone who gets a psychic reading, you're gonna die. And I said, you can't say that to the sitter because you didn't see that. That's not true. You're making an assumption. Tell her what you actually saw. And she said, well, but I did. You didn't. What you saw was, go in detail what you saw. And she said, well, I saw her in a hospital bed and I saw that they found something in her abdomen. Right, that's what you saw. You didn't see her dying.
made an
And
assumption.
that could be, right, you made an assumption. And so being able to call psychics out when they make those mistakes makes them better psychics.
Well, and like one of the first things you teach in that psychic development course is how to tell your energy from another person's energy, or, you know, an outside energy, right? And so, you know, I think there was at one practice session we did was mediumship, and I came in and I was like, well, I don't really want to talk about this situation because I'm pretty sure I made it up. Like I'm positive that it was completely my imagination. And so then I went on to talk about the other ones that seemed like, you know, outside. But I think that's really important that's an important thing that you teach, and so that people can distinguish like what is coming from outside and actually psychic, and then what you're making up, because we have such active, like vibrant imaginations, we can get carried away, and I know I can. So
God knows
really
I can.
important.
Good Lord.
So I guess the question behind the question there is, how do you trust yourself or trust your own experience?
So in training, you, like Christina said, they learn, what do I feel like first?
Oh.
Then you start practicing reading, and you start to know the difference. If something comes in, there wasn't a deductive path to it, so it must be psychic. You experienced it versus you created it. We can also verify a lot of psychic information. So in the tests in class, there are ways to verify that they are actually getting information psychically. What I love is how many different psychics come into class. Everybody thinks, I'm going to come in for psychic development and I'm going to become clairvoyant. And I go, well, I'm only 5'5", and no matter how many basketball classes I take, I'm not going to become taller. We're only going to.
You are what you are.
You are what you are. So you come in and you're going to learn about you, but I'm not going to be able to make you something you're not.
Right.
And we have to test that. So something I loved about Christina, we had a small group where I had them talk to specific monsters. And I sat in the room one at a time with each medium, and watching how the 4 different psychics worked, Christina being one of them, and how in one situation, one spirit was like, I'm not talking to you. And she was super, just like, and Christina, you did everything right. Like, you didn't do anything wrong. But just like, I'm calm and I'm respectful. And she just didn't want to talk to her. She was just done. The spirit did not want to interact with Christina. And then the next person, the spirit was super talkative and willing to talk to them, and also how the interaction works. Christina's much more physical in how information comes to her, versus the other medium, which much more auditory. And maybe that's why, is the spirit was like, I want to talk to you because you don't speak the way I want to. So I don't want to work that hard, or whatever. I don't know. Maybe she didn't like that Christina wore glasses. Like, who the heck knows? It didn't want to talk to her. And I love those experiences for psychics to go, I got nothing. I don't think she wants to talk to me. I was like, she doesn't, right? Like, I don't know why she don't like you.
Well, I think it was the male one. It was the looper, I don't know, but a very sexual, like masculine energy. And actually, for my personality, I feel like it kind of made sense why he did not want to interact with me.
It's because you're so damn cute with your beautiful glasses, and he was just like, dick. See, I would. He's like,
she's boring.
I would never be able to do this because I have what's called maladaptive daydreaming. Like, I daydream like intensely. Like, I see colors and like I can lose myself. Like, when I drive a lot, I just go into my brain and I don't remember anything. I did this when I was a teenager. Like, when I would be in a boring biology class, I was gone. I wasn't there. I was somewhere else. And so, like, I've always had a trouble, especially when I wanted to have an experience. Like, I will have conversations with my dead grandmother or my father or my mother. I can see them. I can smell her hairspray. My grandmother like would layer her hair with hairspray. It was so intense. I can't even. But it's just, like, there's sometimes I'll come out of it and I'll be like, I mean, that was a daydream, right? I mean,
you
it probably
should take
was.
the psychic development course.
I would fail. I fail every test I take.
No, dude, I thought I was going to be a potato when I went in there. Aly probably maybe remembers, but I was like nervous, and I was like, I have no abilities. I was just like compelled to take this class because I was so curious.
I'm somebody who, my late father, during the 90s, I don't know if you remember, they would have like, who was it? The psychic on TVs. You had like Miss Cleo, and you had like what was
John
his name?
Edwards.
John Edwards.
Yes.
My father watched John Edwards like crazy.
So, Chris, you have such a vibrant mind that I just literally was watching your mind, and I could see that you could see him, and I was like, oh, that's John Edwards that you're thinking of.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was John Edwards. And the thing is, like, when I was a kid, I wanted to believe all that stuff. Because see, I'm somebody who's very open-minded. At least I hope I am. I'm somebody who would love to talk to somebody of your nature, but it was like, then you find out, you hear things like, oh, well, John Edwards, he's a fake and he's a fraud, and here's like all these other psychics who fakes and frauds, and I'm like, okay, well, I mean, maybe some of them are, but not all of them. Like, there has to be, like, I believe in ghosts, I believe in the paranormal, I've had experiences, and so it's like, I want to believe in that stuff. Like, I try to be open-minded. And so, yeah, I don't know.
Christina brought up the term potato.
Yeah, I
It's-
love that, by the
Yeah.
way. I'm a potato.
It's
They say it
what
at
I
school a
affect-
lot.
It's what I affectionately call people who are sensitiveless. Who they're as psychic as a potato.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
So I'll say, okay, psychics, tomorrow we're bringing in a potato and you're going to be reading.
Once upon a time, I was out in the field, just basking in the sun. So, see, I was, when I was younger, and my father, and it may have to do with the fact that my father and I had a troubled relationship. And so, because he was interested, I was interested. And I think a part of me wanted to have those abilities. And now what you're saying, and taking into account, like, we're born with that, like it's a natural thing. I don't know. Maybe I did when I was little, but of course I don't anymore.
And maybe you do. I think potatoes are actually kind of rare, not because we don't cook them, but I think that people who actually they don't feel anything when it comes to spirits, are they the 2%? Are they the 2% that don't believe in spirits because they can't interact? They are the potatoes. I think everybody has at least a degree of something because we have instinct.
I agree with that. One thing I've always tried to believe is, I mean, we're all connected, we're all made of the same stuff. And I feel like if that's true, then there has to be a little bit about a bit of that in all of us. No matter who you are, it has to be there. Maybe you've forgotten, maybe you've completely, even that 2%, you may have lost touch with it, but it's there somewhere, buried deep, deep, deep down. Like, you thinking about it, even to the point like you're thinking about somebody you miss, and then a song suddenly just comes on the radio that was a song they loved, and you think, like, that's how I feel about it.
So that kind of leads to a question I've been reflecting on a lot the past year or so personally. Going back to what I was saying about especially within the church, we've had this ironic, tragic divorce from the spiritual. With me personally, that's something I've been trying to explore, because I almost feel like, and Christina knows what I'm talking about, we've talked about it quite a bit. I feel like a self-imposed potato. And by that I mean, yeah, I was talking to my priest a while back about how one of the things he was challenging me on was sort of my spiritual life, and I was explaining to him that I really don't have much of one. Like, a lot of my faith and my beliefs are purely intellectual. Like, I get to where I am by reasoning and rationalization and whatnot, and to date I've been okay with that. Like, that's my relationship with God, is purely, with the spiritual, is purely intellectuals. Like, all roads lead to Rome.
Yeah.
As long as I'm getting there, it's okay.
He's the one of us three that constantly says, if he comes, nothing's gonna happen.
Right.
At like haunted houses, yeah.
And Christina's been challenging me on that, which is really led me to a lot of reflection. And I'm realizing a big part of that is, without going into too much baggage, I grew up with a lot of gaslighting throughout my childhood. So it's a very defensive thing where I'm trying to, like, a lot of my mind's geared toward, like, well, who's trying to pull the wool over my eyes? So having to intellectually think through everything to try to checks and balances, right? So all that to say, I know there's a lot of people out there, and maybe among our listeners, who are kind of in a similar boat, what would you advise as maybe some first steps toward lowering those defenses and getting outside of your head to feel and to experience the spiritual?
Amazing question. First, I
Yes.
want to say that if you are the kind of person where paranormal stuff doesn't happen, I want to hang out with you more so that I have a more normal life.
As somebody who's been hanging out with that dude for 27 years,
Yeah, that sounds pretty peaceful, actually. I like to go back to, since you like logic, I like to go back to I think, therefore I am.
Yeah.
Someone's experiences are irrefutable. No one can tell somebody what they are experiencing. And you shouldn't gaslight yourself based on what you're experiencing. Unfortunately, as Americans, we have a tendency to swing a pendulum instead of find balance.
Right.
And it can go to the point of spiritual bypassing, where we find excuses that are spiritual for something that is mundane. If it talks like a duck and looks like a duck, not the ducks talk, then it is probably spiritual. It makes the most sense. If you can explain it away as mundane, then it is.
Mm.
But if you cannot, then it isn't. And we don't need to pick a team, Americans.
Right.
You can be both. You can say, this fell because I didn't like. There's a student of mine, she was sitting doing a reading, and the poster behind her fell. And the sitter said, "Oh my gosh, was that a message from my relatives?" And she said, "No, it was just a piece of tape." Like, the tape wasn't good. That's all. The tape sometimes
Right.
it's just tape.
sometimes a cigar
Like-
is just a cigar.
Right? It's not that. But if something happens that doesn't fit the mundane, then it is spiritual, and it's okay to have both. You don't have to be on one side or the other and commit to it and wear, the colors of that team. You can have both. Feeling your experiences and naming them, they're irrefutable. And therefore, you do open yourself up to being more spiritual by not gaslighting yourself.
Yeah, makes sense.
That
That
makes
makes
It
sense.
does
Yeah.
make
I
that
do.
that actually makes, yeah. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Even in class, like a knock, sorry, Christina, a knock will happen while I'm teaching, and there's no one in my house. I live alone. And it's obviously a knock, and
Yeah.
both my hands are on screen, and there's no one on that side of the wall. It's just like a bathroom's on the other side. It is a knocking sound that you can't explain away with, oh, it's a pipe. Like, it's not a pipe. It's obviously a knocking sound. And I'll say, oh, it's some spirit, and move on. Like, I don't think that it's some divine message where they're trying to get my attention. It's just a spirit. We're going to keep going with class.
Mhm.
I'm not going to give it time. I've got a lecture to teach. On the other hand, when something, like I said, something falls, I don't think a spirit knocked it over. I'm like, oh, I didn't put that right. I'm, clumsy or wasn't thinking, and it fell over. Things like knowing my daughter was, making it to second base was irrefutable, unfortunate information.
Right.
My heart goes out to you too as a parent.
Yeah.
You probably handled that like 10 times better than I would have, because I would have been like, I'd be on my second bottle of wine by the time she got home. I just, oh my God.
Oh man.
Never recovering from that.
Yeah. Like, oh.
So we are a little past an hour. I have like a million questions, but we don't have
Me
a lot
too.
of time for that. So maybe in the future, if Aly, you ever wanted to come back and hang out and talk again, that would be awesome.
Yes. I've
I
loved
would love
talking.
to.
I've loved talking with you. This has been
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been
I
a
would
real
love
pleasure.
that. Like, shoot, let's book it. Like
Yeah.
I love talking to you guys. I love how open you are, and I love that you have a platform to normalize things that are taboo or scary, or where you have listeners who may go, oh my gosh, I'm normal, there are other people like me.
Yeah.
And by
Mhm.
allowing a space for me to come on and talk, you allow for people to feel normal.
Something that we push here is
Yes.
that this is a safe place. We discuss all kinds of things. And even if we don't necessarily adopt to the idea, we try to stay very open to the possibilities. Something that I love, I grew up reading Sherlock Holmes, and I believe the quote was, if you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however highly improbable, it must be the truth. And so I think it's very healthy to believe in possibilities. Even science itself. If you go back 1,000 years ago, they believed that the Earth was the center of the universe. That was concrete. Now we know that's not true. But at the time, if you had spoke against that, you would have been persecuted and burned at the stake. And it's
Mhm.
like, you have to believe in possibilities.
Yeah.
You have to open your heart up to the idea that, as fantastic and as whatever, things are possible. And so here we try to really make people feel comfortable to know that you're not crazy. And if you're seeing something and you're feeling something, it is important that you're not invalidated. No matter what society says, that you're not invalidated, because what you're feeling, what you're experiencing is important.
Mm-hmm. I like to point out, it's like, dude, I believe this, 30-something-year-old guy popped into history as the divine incarnate. I'm in no position to tell anybody what they think is crazy.
Right?
Like, everything is on the table at that point.
When it comes to psychics, when someone says I don't believe in psychics, or it's not scientific, my response is it's actually unscientific for you to say you don't believe in psychics, because just because you don't experience it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. You have not experienced $1 billion in $1 bills, but we know they exist. You haven't experienced sonar, but we know it exists. And we just don't have, like you said, Chris, we just don't have the tests yet to measure it, but we can say it does exist. And with time, science will be able to help normalize this as normal as we know the world is round.
Exactly.
I have very much suspected the same. Yeah.
Well, I really thank you so much. I have really
Yeah.
enjoyed this. I would say this has probably been one of the best episodes yet. So
It's been really fun.
Yes. Thank you for coming onto our show and sharing with us your experiences and your time.
So, how can our listeners learn more about you?
There you
go. So I am intrinsically a teacher. So even though I am hireable through the Otso Salon, OTSO, my drive is, of course, to teach. So as an instructor, the school is bear as in rar, not bear as in, an unfortunate child on a date. Bear. Bearbridgeacademy.com is where you can find classes in lots of different areas. We don't edit education. So we do have lots of different things for people to learn in that are good for their journey. We encourage all faiths and all walks of life, and we make sure that it stays a safe place. That way, if there are, even though Christianity has done some damage to this area, we encourage Christian students as well. Like we don't demonize Christian students or any other faith. We have Christian psychics and witches as well. bearbridgeacademy.com. And if you want to hire me personally, it's theotsosalon.com. And that's where you can find me and a ton of other practitioners throughout the country who are there to help in doing psychic readings, to help with giving guidance, to being a witch for hire to make your world a better place, or as a healer. I'm very proud of the places that I work, and I hope that listeners who are interested in the same things can find us.
Yep. I love it. I love your classes, you know, and it's been such a pleasure to meet you, and that you do retreats and stuff, and it's so fun. So for our listeners, we actually do have also a discount code for you guys. So if you book a course or purchase a course or book a service, either at Bear Bridge or Otso Salon, respectively, you get 20% off. So that code is capital L little podcast. So there you go.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I've had so much fun. Thank you.